Okay, we're good to go.
Good morning and welcome to the December 29th special meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors. I will call the meeting to order and entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I approve.
Approval.
Second.
Okay, I think it was moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Franzen. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, passes 6-0. Director Beerbaum, will you please read our purpose statement?
The Ames Community School District commits to equity and access that empowers every individual to reach their full personal and educational potential.
Thank you. And then I will go ahead and open our public forum. And Eric, if you can open that, I will read our statement on public comments. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff members may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per item. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school. Others will state their name and address. And just as a reminder, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we will go in order and give you permission to speak. I'm trying to give a good teacher wait time. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Okay. Oh, there's one. Okay, Kira Werstein. And you have been given permission to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm in a car, so I'm not sure on my reception here, but my name's Kira Werstein. I live at 2516 Camden Drive in Ames. And my thoughts this morning, just as you're making your decision to the board and the administrative team, is I know that the group of parents that have been calling in lately have been called a few very vocal group of parents. And I want to just make sure that it's recognized that it's not a very few vocal group of parents, that it's the majority of parents that want their children back in school. And that can be seen, I'm sure, in the data that you collected with the survey and with the fact that when it was announced that the possibility of going back 100% face-to-face, that over 90% of parents were ready to send their children back. So it's not a few vocal parents. Again, it is the majority of parents that want their children back in school. I also think it's very important that as the board is making this decision, that you recognize that it's not about your comfort. The parents are feeling very disappointed in hearing that statement being said over and over. We hear Superintendent Reisner say, "Is the board comfortable with that?" And the board says, "Yes, I'm comfortable with that." It's not about your comfort as far as the decision. What it's about is it safe? Can it be done safely? Are the children's needs being met? The answer is no. We heard Principal Michael say the children are not well. So it's not about you. And if you can sleep at night, it's not about your comfort. It's about, again, the children, and prioritizing the children, not just your managing your anxiety level. And again, it's not about just serving the children academically. I think it's important to consider that schools are designed to serve the whole child, social, emotionally, mentally, emotionally, socially. That's part of their support system. And so we recognize that that this is affecting the children substantially by isolating them because a few adults are very anxious. And so let's move forward with prioritizing both safety, COVID mitigation, and prioritizing the whole school, the education of the child and that child holistically. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, I don't see any hands, so I will go ahead and close our public forum. And we will move on to our action item. And is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
I
I
move
move the board approve the transition to 100% face-to-face learning for grades PK through 5 starting on January 4th.
Second.
Moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Franzen. Discussion.
Are we going to get updates from Kathy?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. So Dr. Arnold, would you go ahead and give today's update?
Sure, happy to do so. Good morning. Here's an update on our student and staff COVID status and our local metrics. Today, we have 1 student positive for COVID-19 and 5 quarantining due to being identified as close contacts. There are 2 staff positive and 0 identified as close contacts. Those numbers are based upon what has been reported either via email or through our online reporting systems. And it is important for parents and staff to report both positives and close contacts through the winter break, no matter which model we do return in next week. I don't have student or staff absence rates since we are on break, though based on what has been reported through the COVID reports, based on that, I would estimate we would be in that green zone of less than 5% absence due to illness for both groups. The charts below show our community metric. Our 14-day average new daily case rate is 26.6, which represents a continued decrease from their school board meeting on December 7th and places us in the yellow category for a community metric. And if you scroll down just a little bit, below are 2 charts showing the case rate. The left chart shows the case rate over the past month, and the right one shows the case rate throughout our school year. The yellow, orange, and red lines represent the bottom of the risk level from that metrics, and the black line represents the level at which is our community override level. During the school year, our 14-day case rate has ranged from a high point of 115 new cases per day on November 22nd, and the lowest was 17.5 on October 7th. So based on the student and staff indicators projected to be in green and a community indicator in yellow, our metrics recommend 100% face-to-face as our educational model. And just as a reminder, according to our metrics, the community indicator only impacts the guidance if it's 2 levels higher than the school indicator. So at this point, the community indicator in yellow is 1 level above the projected school indicator, which is green, which would then not increase the level, putting us into the green zone for educational model. And that's the numbers.
And so I brought the recommendation today because I think it's important as we see this trend of our daily case rate decreasing, that we get our early learners back face to face. As I've said in the past, we know that they learn best from their teacher in the classroom. And so those concerns about just getting them back in full-time are still the same reasons that I had initially.
And I have a few questions, Superintendent Reisner. I
Sure.
have four questions, but they're easy.
No, there's no such thing.
Okay, I'm lying. No, I'm joking. I'm wondering if the district has any plans to, or understands how teachers will be able to access the vaccines.
Access the what?
vaccines that are available?
Oh, Dr. Arnold, I'm going to turn that to you.
Sure, we're working with Story County Emergency Management on that. We have filled out all of their questionnaires and we're waiting to hear back when that might happen. I don't have a date yet, but as soon as I hear from them, we will move forward with whatever we can for that type of planning. Our school nurses have already been included and given the opportunity for vaccinations. The teachers will be, I would assume, next, but again, I'm waiting on that prioritization from Story County Emergency Management.
So does that mean that the district will receive doses and then the teachers will be vaccinated by the district? Or I'm not sure I don't understand.
I'm not sure either yet. It's gonna, that's still in the planning phases. So it would, I have not heard whether or not we would not physically be probably giving them. It would be through the contractor who gives our flu vaccines, would be my guess. But I don't have the answers on that yet.
And the plan would be to make that available to all district staff.
To the best of my knowledge, again, that is not something I've been given information or feedback yet from Story County Emergency Management. We provided them our numbers based on all of our categories, and then we're waiting to hear back from them. And once probably the 1A group gets finished.
Okay. And then what are, for Superintendent Reisner, we've heard from parents that they would like a second opt-in day for fully in person. And I didn't know where the district was on those concerns.
Yeah, we actually, that came during break, kind of that feedback. And so I did share that with my directors, and my guess would be that that's not going to be of issue with the principals, but we have not had an opportunity to talk to the principals about that.
Okay. And then I know we're here to vote on primary school. I'm wondering if the district is at some point considering this kind of move for secondary school as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. And so we are right now planning for our secondary transition to face-to-face, which would happen at the beginning of second semester. Because it would be very difficult for students to transition back in the secondary setting because of the way the model is set up. And we have teachers teaching both remote and on campus. And so, or teaching virtually, I guess I should say, and on campus, so that's going to make a really difficult transition back. So we're going to have to do some rescheduling of the master schedule potentially.
And my last question is just about how, if we did move forward with this proposal, how it would work if cases were again to spike. Are you planning that hybrid would ever be an option for elementary, or that the students are either 100% in or 100% out?
We haven't taken our hybrid model off the table. So if we began to see numbers that would lead us to make that choice to go back, we would most likely go back into hybrid before going fully remote.
And we would use the metrics for that decision?
Yes, we would use the metrics to help guide the decision. I don't know that necessarily it would be a hard fast, just the metrics, but we would use the metrics. And then as the board kind of talked last time, our professional judgment as our admin team with feedback from teachers.
Thank you.
You bet.
I want to follow up a little bit on the vaccine. I'm still not clear. Is it that we have not received any information? We're not a staff essential worker? I'm still not clear on that point.
We've not received any information on where teachers will be scheduled. We initially was reported that we would be in that next phase. However, I have not received confirmation of that from Story County Emergency Management yet on any schedule or date.
And Director Colton, they asked us to provide the information. So as you heard Dr. Arnold talk about, we submitted our numbers to them, and then from there they take those and determine kind of the detailed plan. That's how we're understanding it.
But we don't have any of it.
I believe our nurses had the opportunity to be vaccinated.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Do we know, I guess this question goes for Dr. Arnold, any projections of what the numbers might be after the New Year's, after the holiday? Do we have any indication of what that might be?
To be honest, no. The projections for after Thanksgiving were that we were supposed to see a spike following Thanksgiving, and we saw that cases decreased. So I can't give one because I don't know that we really have a good way of predicting that based on what we saw over Thanksgiving.
Does anyone else have?
I just had a quick question. Can you remind the board and parents who are listening what day-to-day activity will look like for elementary kids? Do you have, are they being restricted to certain cohorts? Are they eating lunch in classrooms? What are the mitigation strategies besides mask wearing?
Dr. Hawkins, would you like to speak to that? I know you've been
you bet. I'm happy to.
In the planning meetings.
So yes, regarding cohorting, there will be work to continue cohorting to the greatest extent possible. You're going to hear me use that phrase quite a bit, the greatest extent possible. So we're working right now to determine how might cohorting work in a number of situations where currently programming is being delivered to students remotely on their virtual day. So for example, music lessons are being delivered to students. Oftentimes, students who are receiving reading interventions are being delivered to students on remote days. So there's some activities that are being delivered to, or programming that's being delivered to students on their remote day. We're going to need to figure out what does that look like when all students come back. That certainly can happen in the classroom. But it becomes a staffing issue to determine whether or not we can do that efficiently in all buildings at the same time, right, with the staff we have. So we may need to see some cross cohorting in those situations. So the cohorting will still exist, but it may not be able to be as strict as it once was, right? And fortunately, hopefully our numbers are at a place where that can be still done safely because our case counts are low and other mitigation strategies. Similarly, when it comes to lunch and snack time, we're going to work to social distance to the greatest extent possible. So while that doesn't mean a guarantee of 6 feet necessarily in the classroom or in the lunchroom, it does mean that the greatest amount of distance that we can provide people is what will be provided. I know some principals are planning to have students eat in their classrooms, and in order to increase that amount of distance, have some of the students eat in the cafeteria. Other principals have indicated that their cafeteria, and based on the numbers that they have, they're going to be able to greatest social distance in the cafeteria. So I couldn't say, Director Linkaitis, that it's going to be uniform in the way that they're going to do it, but what they're going to be doing is working to provide the greatest amount of distance possible, combining a variety of strategies, ensuring staffing for appropriate supervision of those settings.
A follow-up I had, Dr. Hawkins, and I was thinking about, once we're fully 100% in person, there's still going to be students that quarantine. And that's at no fault of their own, right? What's the educational model look like for those students to make sure they don't fall behind? Because up until now, there's always been the hybrid possibility that it was kind of similar to what they were already doing. Have the principals had any discussions about that, or how to stay engaged with students that might need to stay at home? Because also I would guess parents are going to be much more leery of sending any student to school just on a regular day if they appear sick in any way. So I would expect there's going to be more students like that.
Yep, I understand completely. Yes, well, fortunately, as you heard Superintendent Reisner say, we're going to continue the remote campus virtual opportunities for students, regardless of model, both at the elementary and at the secondary system. And so for those students that are needing to quarantine and be gone from school for a while, what we'll be working to do is to figure out how to take advantage of some of those virtual opportunities that will still exist in order to not have kids disengaged for the time of that quarantine. And so while it may look a little bit different because it's not happening necessarily on a remote day within a hybrid model, there still is some infrastructure, for lack of a better word, built around how to facilitate remote learning that we're going to be able to rely on. So I know that that's a broad answer. It's not specific because it certainly is going to look different in our secondary system because of the different delivery of remote learning in our secondary system than it does in our primary. But I'm confident that with what we've learned throughout this fall with the delivery of remote learning, that we'll find ways to be able to engage students remotely if they happen to quarantine or need to be gone from school for an extended period of time.
Okay, thank you. That's something I just think we need to make sure to monitor because we know we have had issues with students and engagement. So
yeah,
thank you.
I don't disagree.
When is the end for secondary? What is the date for them?
The last day of first semester for secondary students is January 29th, which would mean the beginning of second semester would begin February 1st. So ideally, our numbers would be in a point where we'd be able to make this similar transition on February 1st for our secondary students.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one more question, Superintendent Reisner, and it's an equity concern. It was something that came up in the equity committee, and it kind of seemed relevant here. And I'm sorry I didn't ask it when I had my first series of questions, but one of the things that we were told from the principals was that the disciplinary experience in schools was, almost all of the disciplinary concerns had kind of vanished just because there were so few students in the buildings and the teachers were able to kind of address behavioral issues in a different way. I think you also mentioned they were using different techniques. And so I know you had also shared concerns about the students who would be returning, right, when the students come back full time. These are students who have not had a full-time class experience in almost a year. And and the trauma that we've all been through, right, these months, and kind of what the needs of the students who would be returning to us full time would be. And so I'm just curious if you could speak to how your staff plans to address those, disciplinary issues, trauma related issues, because I think for the first few weeks, at least, I think that'll be a really important thing for us to all understand.
Absolutely. So a couple different things that I can talk about. I'm going to start first with those students who may be of greatest behavioral need who are potentially on an IEP because their services have been given in a different way. We know that there may be a greater need when we come back. And so we're very aware of that, but the majority of, I shouldn't say that, I should ask Darcy to speak to this, but many of the students, not the majority, probably many of the students would be more accurate, who have been on an IEP for behavior. Some of those students have been in school because we did that modified hybrid, so they have been getting services. The same with students who may be on a 504 plan, who have behavior challenges. From a mental health side, we're working to use a screening tool. So we have a team that's been identifying and working to solidify a screening tool that would be given to students when they come back. or, at some point before the end of the year, to be able to determine what additional supports are needed. We have had Brian Carrico working with our local mental health providers to increase our capacity within what we can serve in the school. And so being able to have those mental health providers come in and deliver services in the school that students haven't been receiving currently. So those, I hope I answered that. And did that help?
It did help. I guess what I would just hope is that, as we are, as we're kind of working our way through, if this, passes, if we're working our way through, that the district is keeping an eye on the way in which disciplinary issues are handled. I think when we look at our equity data overall, that disciplinary category has been the one that's demonstrated, repeated disparities. And I think understanding people are coming back in this unusual situation with all kinds of, experiences that have been difficult, I would expect to see an increase in behaviors. And so just kind of being sure somebody's monitoring that to be sure that we stay faithful to our equity work would just be my thought.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And we do have a new tracking system. I guess it's not new. We dabbled in it last year, but this year we are much more consistent with it. And we'll be really monitoring that data closely. It's called, it's called Swiss, and it might be kind of good to bring that to the board so you can kind of see what that is, just a demo of it.
Thank you.
You bet.
I'm wondering if you can, if you have an idea what our class sizes will look like at the elementary level, like what's the, range of how many students would be in a classroom for pre-K through 5?
Director McStorff, do you want to speak to that?
Yes. Right now, when I look at our overall class size numbers, they range anywhere from 15 to 24. So 24 would be our highest number. We've got 3 sections. The last time I looked at those numbers, that would be sitting at that 24. Most of them are hovering at right around 20 or less. So I would add that is dependent on the request forms that are coming in, but we monitor that and are looking at if we need to make any staffing changes and what the implications of those staffing changes might be in both of our remote model and our on-site model. So those are numbers as of last night.
And I think this was mentioned before, but I wanted to either reiterate or ask it again for the public. The social distancing with 24 students, I believe you said would be 3 to 4 feet. Is that correct?
It's somewhat dependent on the classroom itself. Not all of our classrooms are the exact same size. And so we've got a model that Jerry Peters put together for us that we are looking at those, especially those 3 sections that are at 24, 23, sitting at those numbers and looking at it. And I want to say that social distancing on paper is 4.5 feet. But I would have to go look at that to make sure that's right, unless somebody else remembers that differently. But 4.5 feet. So you're right. The social distancing is not a 6 foot in those classrooms.
And then just one other kind of logistical question I have. I know in the fall that students were able to take mask breaks at recess, and we're entering the coldest couple of months of the year coming up. And so there's typically in the winter a lot of days when students don't go out for recess. So I'm wondering, is there a plan to try to ensure that they go out even if it's only for 5 minutes, or what's the plan to kind of give them mask breaks, or is there anything like that has been discussed?
Dr. Hawkins, I'm going to again kick that to you because you've been in those planning meetings.
Yeah, I while there's been lots of plans, I don't know that I could speak intelligently right now about mask breaks. I'm more than happy to reach out to our principals and get that information back to the board, but that's not an area that has been discussed with me yet.
Okay.
And nor, I mean, those are kind of those details that
Pretty, yeah. Yep.
that we know we have excellent administrators who do a great job of problem solving around those issues, and so we have full confidence that they will do that.
I have a question. I think Director Mixdorf touched on it on staff. So I wonder, what is it, if we go 100%, what is it going to look for staff that is working remotely? Do we know what percentage they'll have to go back to the classroom, and what does that do for remote students? And with that, do we have a date for parents? Let's say they're in hybrid, but they don't want to go 100% and they'll decide remote. What is the date for people to choose a for elementary, to choose the model?
Our current deadline. So, if I'm understanding the question correctly, as of last night, our staffing will stay the same as it is. Right now, we're able to maintain our remote campus staffing with the numbers that we have right now, and our on-site staffing plan will stay the same. We do have a few sections that are creeping into a higher number that have created a lot of conversation as a director's team on what that plan is, and we've got some ideas in place there if the numbers change. The deadline for requesting to come back 100% for today's decision is January 1st. So parents and families have until the 1st to make those decisions on what is making sense for their families at this time. And then our second deadline, looking ahead to second semester, and that will be open to elementary as well, will be set January 17th. All of that information is on our website as well. It'll walk you through the steps and those dates in a concrete way of what decisions need to be made and when. But January 1st will impact this next move, and then January 17th will impact our second semester move.
But if I understand correctly from a previous question, the January 17th might change, or no, that'll stay the same.
Yep, you're correct. That'll stay the same. There was a request for maybe a later date, later after January. So maybe like at the end of, February or March. So that was what we were speaking to. Sorry, I didn't clarify that.
Thank you. Yeah, that clarifies it.
If I could just add some feedback to that for the district. So I had the opportunity to meet with some students at the middle school, and they gave me some feedback to give to the board. So I'm going to send you all an email, and I will do that. But I've also heard for some parents, I think there's just still some confusion around what we're actually talking about. And what might be helpful is to clarify that when we say a full return to 100% at elementary, or eventually when we get to secondary, that it is just made crystal clear that remote is always an option for families who choose that. I think people are just hearing everybody's going back, and some kids are like, oh, I actually like being in remote. And so just in terms of communication, just as crystal clear as you can be, that families who choose that still have that option, I think will just be helpful.
Thank you. We'll make sure to make that clear. Eric, you got that?
Yep, sure do.
And I would say along those same lines, even though it has been stated many times, but I think it's always good to just include in the communication that goes out about the change that it is contingent upon the metrics, and that it's not a guarantee that we'll remain in 100% face-to-face for the rest of the semester.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board?
I don't have a question. I just was going to make a comment that Superintendent Reisner, I appreciate you bringing this recommendation to all of us. I know every recommendation that you bring to us is agonizing because there's so many things to think through. And clearly with the range of questions that everybody has asked, we all are trying to think through so many things because we just have, we feel the tremendous burden of responsibility that this is. But I really want to just thank our community because we have said over and over that this is all of us. And I am proud of our community for responding. We've all had to make a lot of difficult personal decisions so that we can get our numbers to a safer place than where they were. And Dr. Arnold, I appreciated the picture that you showed because you can see it and you can, as I look at it, I think, oh, yep, that's where life was when that curve was really high. And now our curve is in a place that we were earlier this year. And so I just really appreciate you showing that and this color risk factor for us to understand as a community where we are and how important it is for us to continue to do this, make those kinds of decisions that we can, because it allows us this opportunity to have a recommendation like this brought from Superintendent Reisner and our team. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you, Director Franson.
Anyone else? Okay. It has been moved by Beerbaum and seconded by Franzen to approve the transition to 100% face-to-face learning for grades PK through 5 starting on January 4th. I think it's probably going to be helpful to do a roll call vote. I don't mean to put people on the spot, but just to make sure that I get everybody's down. So I will just go in alphabetical order. Director Bankin.
Aye.
Director Beerbaum.
Aye.
Director Colton.
Nay.
Director Franzen.
Aye.
Director Linkaitis.
Aye.
Director Shields Cook. Aye. Passes 5-1. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
I get this one, Alan. Thank you.
All right. Moved by Franzen, seconded by Linkaitis. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right. Passes 6-0. Have a good day, everyone.
Happy New
Thank
Year.
you.
Great
Happy
New
New
Year.
Year.